In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest NHL trade rumors. Today, we're looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs, Ottawa Senators, and the Vancouver Canucks. We also have some updates on the Trevor Zegras contract situation with the Anaheim Ducks. Another news on some more PTOs, a signing in Tampa, and another NHL veteran has announced his retirement. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of news and some trade talk to take a look at today. First up, we got word that another NHL veteran has announced his retirement. This one won't come as a surprise. This player hasn't played in a little while, and certainly we kind of already knew this was coming, but Andrew Ladd has officially announced his retirement from the NHL. Ladd's currently 37 years old, last played in the 21-22 season for the Arizona Coyotes, so he didn't participate in last year's NHL season. He ended up playing in 1,001 NHL games played, putting up 550 points. He had 5 20-goal seasons, had a long run there as the captain of the Winnipeg Jets. I believe his career high in points was 62, appeared in 65 playoff games. Certainly had some time with Chicago during their terrific run there, multiple Stanley Cups. So certainly had a pretty solid career. Unfortunately, ran into a lot of plaguing injuries later throughout his time with the Islanders especially, which kind of, derailed his career and caused him to miss a lot of time in the last part of his contract. But ultimately, like I said, he still made a lot of money, had a good career, a lot of success, so certainly lots to be proud of. I think that last year, 21-22, after he got traded to the Coyotes, I wasn't even sure if he was going to play, but he pushed himself to get in. I think he appeared in 50 or 55 games that year, something like that. And he obviously, I wonder if he was just pushing himself to try to get to that 1,000-game plateau, because after he hit 1,001, obviously that's where he ended up finishing. So ultimately, like I said, pretty solid career. We'd like to congratulate him on all he's accomplished, and hopefully, the best wishes and whatever comes next for Andrew Ladd in retirement. He was certainly like one of those players that was, well-respected, hardworking guy who certainly earned everything he had, because he wasn't a huge point producer or anything like that. But like I said, he was a good leader and just good role player overall, and certainly, like I said, a well-respected player around the league. Now, we had a very interesting situation in Tampa. This news came later after I had posted the daily video yesterday already. So later in the day, we found out that Josh Archibald with the Tampa Bay Lightning was placed on waivers for unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination, which was kind of odd in a way, because Josh Archibald had only signed with Tampa this past summer, like just a few months ago, as an unrestricted free agent. He was early in free agency. He had signed a UFA deal with Tampa. I believe it was a 2-year deal. And now apparently he's informed the team that he's taking a step back from hockey, planning on playing hockey this year, and would not be reporting to training camp. So they mutually agreed to terminate the contract, which is kind of odd. Of course, we don't really know his reasoning or anything like that. We don't really need to, I guess. That's his, his business. But because of that, Tampa was able to then take this newfound salary cap space, and they signed UFA Tyler Motte to a 1-year deal at $800,000, similar amount that Archibald was going to be earning if he had indeed played. So obviously Tampa gets a similar type player, and replaces them in the lineup, except this time they get a 1-year deal. And really, like, I know a lot of people were kind of wondering, like, Tyler Motte's one of those guys that remain unsigned, and you just wonder, because clearly he can play. It's not like he's not good enough to be in the NHL. But I know there was an article in the New York Post, Larry Brooks, and based on what his knowledge of the situation was, Motte ended up back with the Rangers for the second year in a row at the NHL trade deadline, and it was believed that after his first time being traded to the Rangers when he left Vancouver, that they were quite fond of each other. They both, the team and the player, were quite happy, and they wanted to try to work out a situation for him to stay. It didn't work out last year. He ended up signing a free agent contract, a 1-year deal with the Senators. Was a decent fit there, had a decent year. And of course, Ottawa, once they knew for sure they weren't making the playoffs, they traded him back to the Rangers. Again, had a chance to go there, compete in the playoffs. And again, at the end of the season, there was word that there was mutual interest for him to be re-signed and stay with the Rangers. And again, for the second year in a row, he basically was looking for too much money. And kind of what the word is that he was overestimating his value on the UFA market. And as much as the Rangers wanted the player, they did not want to pay the asking price that he and his agent were looking for, which was believed to be around $2 million per season. I mean, that's a lot of money to sink into a fourth line player. A lot of teams, because of their first and second line players getting more and more money, your bottom six guys are kind of getting squeezed a little bit, and a lot of people on the fourth line are making $1 million or sometimes less, $800,000-900,000. And I guess that's kind of where most teams valued in Sign Motte, is that it was more of a $1 million or less kind of player, kind of contract. He was looking for $2 million, and apparently, like last year, took a long time into the offseason before he decided to budge on that. And at least that's what the New York Post is saying. And obviously, they have some intel from the Rangers organization. And like I said, that's 2 years in a row that, I guess he kind of overstated what he was looking for. If he would have, been agreeing to take a contract like this, he probably could have stayed with the Rangers. I mean, obviously, he'll be in a good situation in Tampa. Tampa's always competitive. Obviously, won a couple of Stanley Cups recently. They've had to redo their, especially their bottom six for the most part the last couple of years because of the turnover and the cap constraints and all that. So we'll see. He should be a pretty good fit there. But just an interesting situation that unfolded between the Archibald situation and Motte, and of course Motte being unsigned and not being able to go back to New York for the second year in a row. Now we also got word that the another player who's unsigned, but this one's not quite as curious, but still you'd think he'd get a deal somewhere. Colin White, of course, who played in Florida last year after being with the Ottawa Senators for the first 4 or 5 years to start his career. Colin White ended up getting bought out by Ottawa. Of course, he had a good start, got a longer-term deal. They signed him to a 6-year contract extension, and then he really just fell off and couldn't keep up. Injuries played a role as well. Went to Florida last year after getting bought out in Ottawa on a 1-year contract. He did okay, but not enough to stick around. Now he's going to go to camp with the Pittsburgh Penguins on a PTO and hopes to get a 1-year deal. Of course, the Penguins, this is a player that Kyle Dubas would have seen a lot during his time in Toronto. Obviously, Toronto and Ottawa play each other a lot. So we'll see. Obviously, White so far has been his entire career in the Atlantic Division. So, like I said, Dubas very familiar with this player. We'll see what happens. He came out of the draft in U.S. college hockey with a ton of potential. He had a great World Juniors and started his career a little slow, but then things picked up. He was progressing. Looked like he might only be a third-line player, is what he was progressing to be in Ottawa. And then he I don't know, he had some injuries, and I think it definitely played a role, but he just could not get back to that point. Unfortunate to see a young career which had so much promise, kind of nosedive so quickly. But at the end of the day, that's what's happened so far. Trevor Zegras in Anaheim is in a very frustrating situation. We had talked before, a few days back, when Elliotte Friedman and Jeff Merrick had their latest 32 Thoughts podcast, that Elliotte was saying that things were trending towards a bridge deal and that he would be very surprised if they ended up agreeing on a long-term deal because it wasn't looking that way. Now we got more information as well. Pierre LeBrun, NHL Insider, has been reporting for The Athletic, kind of saying the same things, except that things are, not only is he agreeing that things are trending towards a bridge deal, but that things are very slow moving. Word is that Zegras has become very frustrated, saying that because he was interviewed and he was quoted as saying that he'd really like to be back in town with his teammates and kind of go into those early skates, get ready for camp, but that he's definitely not going to return to Anaheim until he gets a contract sorted out. So obviously you don't want him being one of your best players, arriving and missing part of camp. Obviously Pat Verbeek was asked, the GM of the Ducks, for a statement, and he said his team policy is not to comment on contract negotiations. So no word on that front, but based on what we're hearing and where it's coming from multiple sources, it does sound like Zegras would really like to get this sorted out, and Verbeek's playing hardball, and he would just like to get back with his teammates, and is getting quite frustrated. So hopefully they can come to terms and get him to camp on time. Let's hope, because obviously being one of the top players in the game, just from an entertainment perspective and just for the league in general, it's better when he's in it. So ultimately, I hope they get that sorted out. Some news out of the Senators before we get to some of the trade talk. But the Ottawa Senators sale with Michael Andlauer buying the team is expected to close early this week. Teams are, according to Bruce Garriock, things are trending towards probably looking like Tuesday. The NHL does need to do a conference call with the entire board of directors to approve the sale, and they were just, I believe, waiting for the lawyers to have all the T's crossed, I's dotted, etc., according to Bruce Garriock, which was expected to get probably wrapped up over the course of the weekend is what they were hoping for. And like I said, between Monday and Tuesday, we should hopefully get word that the sale is closed and that Michael Andlauer is going to be, officially have the full reign here of ownership on the Senators. I believe there was already, on the course of this weekend too, I believe that there was things were in the works for him to sell his minority share that he owned of the Montreal Canadiens as well. Some other news in Ottawa, according to Bruce Garriock as well. He had an article out over the weekend talking about a variety of things, including the sale, but he did make mention about a variety of things that happened over the team over the course of the offseason. And one thing he mentioned is that sources are telling him now that a big part of the reason why Alex DeBrincat did not want to stay in Ottawa is that he had issues with not being considered the team's top left winger and not consistently getting first line and first power play line minutes. Obviously, for the most part, he played behind left winger and captain Brady Tkachuk. It was a good problem to have, you would think, having guys like Tkachuk and DeBrincat as your top six wingers. DeBrincat, according to the sources of Garriock, didn't necessarily see it that way and didn't kind of like sharing the spotlight and sharing the ice time is more so the case. So if that's indeed the case, it's kind of, I don't know, you would think that he would, as much as I understand he was used to being more of the guy in Chicago than he was in Ottawa, because obviously they had a deeper forward group. But if you're going to be on a really good team and have a team that's going to have a chance to contend for Stanley Cups, you're going to have to share that responsibility, the ice time, the spotlight, and all that's going to come with it. So I don't really quite understand now. Of course, there could be more to that. We also know that there was certainly a degree of certainty that there was something to do with the fact that he preferred to play at home. He never seemed to get comfortable in Ottawa. But again, and I want to remind fans, especially for anybody who might have issue with DeBrincat for not wanting to stay, you got to remember he never asked to be traded to Ottawa. Ottawa and Pierre Dorion knew when they traded for him that they were not allowed to speak to him ahead of time about a contract extension or to get his feelings on the situation at all. The Blackhawks would not allow the Senators to speak with DeBrincat or his representatives. Had they pushed for that and been able to get that, they probably would have known that we're not real sure about this, and maybe they would have laid off and gone a different direction. I mean, ultimately, they took a gamble. They paid a big price, but for the most part, they did well to get back, end up back at square one or close to it afterwards, and they got a pretty good replacement in Vladimir Tarasenko. So you took a stab, you tried it, it didn't work out, and you're moving on. Obviously, the interview with Timmy Stützle, some of the quotes there kind of getting a lot of play and airtime as well from the 32 Thoughts interview that Stützle did. Some of the quotes, too, I kind of feel are a little bit missed. I don't know how to describe it, but they're just not really taken in the proper context because of how they're being marketed. Like, I see some headlines saying basically that, when he was asked about the DeBrincat situation, he said that if we want guys that want to be here, and if you don't want to be here, then good luck, sayonara, essentially. But he gave a whole long quote, and when you only take out the part that make it sound like he basically said, don't let the door hit the ass on the way out. That's not what he said. It was not that kind of context. He said they all wanted Alex DeBrincat to stay. They were not really going to go out of their way to push and convince him because they didn't think that, one, they should need to do that because he should want to be there. And he also said that, they're comfortable and confident enough in their group and that they have the guys who want to stay there and want to be there, that if he didn't want to be, then that's fine. You can go elsewhere and good luck to you. It's just a lot of the quotes from that interview are being kind of the headlines, the way they're being portrayed, or just, I don't think it doesn't get you a full true story of what he said. So I recommend you listen to that before you kind of make it sound like Timmy was kind of, calling DeBrincat out and kind of saying some nasty stuff. He was not, at least. If you listen to the whole thing, you'll get a different feeling for how everything came out for sure. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to transition now to some trade rumor talk. We might as well stay with the Sens since we've obviously had a couple of Sens topics here. We're going to talk about the Sens, Leafs, and Canucks today. Obviously, in Ottawa, they continue to negotiate with Shane Pinto. We talked yesterday about the fact that the Bruins were reportedly interested in picking him up in a trade if they can't come to terms, if things reach that point. Like I said, I don't think we're anywhere near that point at this point. Everybody believes Pinto absolutely wants to be in Ottawa. It's nothing about that. It's just that the Senators have got themselves in for the first time in a long time, in a tricky salary cap situation, and they can't offer him enough money that he'll accept, that they know he deserves as well, because of their other moves this offseason. They're just trying to figure out and navigate their way around that. Obviously, they're hoping to get things done in a timely enough manner so that he doesn't miss training camp as well, because obviously he's not likely going to report without having a contract. Most players don't, so we'll have to see on that. It's believed that they're looking at moving Matthew Joseph. I know I've seen some articles today saying that the belief is that the Sens are kind of considering some options and looking at teams like Anaheim and San Jose as potential trade partners to shed some money. They're both teams obviously in California that are rebuilding. Both teams are in a position to take on some money, especially the Ducks. In that, obviously a player like Joseph might be more, somebody that they're willing to take on more than most teams around the league. Now, the Sens are likely, if they are going to move Joseph, are likely going to have to send a prospect or something else with him as a bit of a sweetener. Hopefully it's nothing too crazy because they don't want to give up, anything too valuable, of course, if you can help it. But they do have multiple first-round picks for the upcoming 2024 draft, because they do have their own pick still, and they also have a conditional first-round pick that came on the Brinket trade to Detroit. So obviously there's some more draft currency there they could consider attaching, but the Red Wings have some conditions there because they don't know what picks they're going to have. The Boston pick is involved, and it could end up being the Boston pick that goes to Ottawa. And there's some things that we just don't know yet to know exactly which other pick they're going to have. So complicates things a little bit to involve that in yet another trade. But at the end of the day, they have draft currency. They have prospects that they're definitely willing to part with, that they know that as much as they have a lot of prospects they like, that they're not all going to be able to play in Ottawa. And if it means them getting a deal done to keep another player that they really liked, and that's something that they're going to do. So it may not end up being Joseph, but when you look at the roster, it's just hard to imagine that it's going to be anybody else. Some people feel Eric Brandstrom, but I don't know. I think if they were going to trade Brandstrom, I think they would have done this already. They signed him to another 1-year contract, and I really see him likely playing more so on that third pair. But at the same time, too, they have Tyler Clevin, they have Jacob Bernard-Docker. They could afford to not have Brandstrom on the roster. The only thing is because he was a centerpiece that came from a Mark Stone trade, and obviously that was a big trade in team history as they went through this rebuild a few years ago. I don't think they're going to want to use Brandstrom as like a sweetener to take a bad contract. Like, if they're going to move Brandstrom, they're going to want to do it in a more meaningful way. So that's why I think they're more likely trying to do another type of asset, whether it be another pick or another prospect that they see maybe being a good prospect for another team, but it may not have a good chance to make their own roster. So we'll see where that goes. As we mentioned as well, with the Vancouver Canucks, they're certainly a team looking to shed salary as well. Tanner Pearson likely being able to play this year, at least that's the way things look today, is causing a real cap issue, and it's believed that Connor Garland is the ultimate cap victim, you could say, that they're looking to move on from to free up the necessary space, because obviously with Pearson being on the active roster, that causes, as much as you're happy for him, the team is not happy with their cap situation. They've been looking for flexibility the entire time. We've talked about Brock Besser's name. He has been in the rumor mill, but really until he shows that he's going to play and have a good season, I don't think there's really going to be a ton of interest given what he's making on his contract. Of course, in Besser's case, If he plays that well and increases his value, Vancouver's probably going to want to keep him. Obviously, after this year, he's going to need a new contract, and obviously his next deal might not be so lucrative based on how he's played the last few years. So it could be an entirely different situation with him. That's why I do think Connor Garland is a much more likely player that would have a bit of value there. So we'll have to see what Vancouver does. I still wonder, too, about the Tyler Myers trade. That was rumored with the Sharks for Kevin LeBanc. There was a lot of people that said that Tyler Myers had a weird clause in his contract that his signing bonus was going to be paid in September. So you got to think, well, we're in September. I don't remember the exact day in September. I think it's like the 15th. So we're only a few days from that. Is that a trade we're still going to see? But it was believed to bring back Kevin LeBanc from the Sharks. So that's not really a money-saving deal a whole lot. I think from a cap perspective, LeBanc's number is a little lower than Myers, but it does free up some money. It would help as well. But, clearly they could make multiple moves. I don't think the Myers deal alone is going to be enough to really satisfy what they're looking for here. So expect the Canucks to try to be busy before camp. Same thing goes for the Leafs. There's still a belief that they're looking to continue to add. We know the whole Nylander situation, which has been discussed quite a bit. That is obviously something that Brad's reliving in the Leafs. They're still hoping they can try to resolve before the season starts, and they're going to continue to try to do that. But there's also belief that they're still looking to maybe round out the blue line and bring in another physical, more gritty D. That's still missing a little bit of snarl on that back end. Obviously, they have McCabe who can provide some of that, but if you look at the lineup, they added Klingberg, but he's not that kind of defenseman. Obviously they lost Luke Shen. They haven't really replaced somebody who can, provide a lot of physicality and hits and block shots. Like, that's the kind of D that you need, especially on your third pair, can kill penalties. And to be honest, if you look at the free agent market, there's not much left out there. That there's nobody that really obvious, in my opinion, that kind of fits the bill. I mean, you look around the UFA list, like Patrick Nemeth is available, but I don't see that being something that they want to go down, right? So clearly they're going to be looking for something in a trade. There's a lot of teams that have more than enough defense, and they're probably going to be scouring the league ahead of camp, trying to see if they can't maybe, bring in somebody. It might have to be a dollar for dollar. Like I said before, I wondered if the Leafs do need to kind of want to free up a little bit of cap space to make themselves compliant, try to add on a roster at the same time, they might have to move a contract that's a little bit more money. So you might see a guy like a Yarncroke, for example, who many people feel is the kind of the odd man out. We'll see. And of course, they're going to likely have to put a guy like Marty Jones through waivers, because obviously they're going to need, to reduce their roster size, and the third goalie is going to have to go down to the Marlies, so that'll create a little bit of flexibility too. So we'll see. Obviously, we know the Leafs are over the cap. They have some LTIR money, but they need to free up some additional space to that. And if they want to add on a blue line, they're going to have to free up even more. So we'll have to see. But if it's in a trade, then you can see money going out as well to help facilitate part of that. So let me know your thoughts on all today's news or rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.